I'm Michael Previte. I'm the co-founder, CTO, and SVP of R&D at Element Biosciences. The imaging system that we use today is advantageous in two different ways. The first way that it's advantageous is it really creates a large field of view. And that large field of view gives you a uniform image across the field from edge to edge. I've worked in microscopy for, 25 years, I think, and I have yet to come across, and I've worked in some very, prolific microscopy labs. I've yet to see an imaging system, either commercially or academically, that's as profoundly advanced as the one that we built. In addition to that, while you have high quality across the field, you also have high resolution for a pretty large field. That creates the opportunity when we were talking earlier about registration and talking earlier about multiple cycles and having to align those multiple cycles, that creates an opportunity for us to be more accurate in our ability to match the cycle-to-cycle stacks of data that we're collecting. In addition, it's partly contributes to our ability to run quickly in terms of collect the images, and also it also creates a stability to the instrument that, from an imaging perspective, is less susceptible to noise from vibrations, et cetera, et cetera. So I think we have quite a bit of sophistication in the imaging platform, and at the same time, it's very simple and elegant. And that part of it has really created a robust design and allowed us to deliver these high density reads on our flow cells that on a random flow cell has been difficult to achieve in the past. If you're doing 150 or 300 cycles of sequencing, you have to remember that you're taking images. And essentially the images that you're taking are 300 cycles of images. So you have a stack of images through 300 cycles. And then you probably have multiple stacks of those because you've got to scan a pretty large area of your flow cell. And so when you're stacking up the images per field of view or per area that you're looking at, you've got to register all those. And if the registration of those is off, then essentially you can see that you could get color mixing. Or if you were supposed to be reading one base classification on one set of genes all the way up through from cycle 1 to 300, and they're misregistered, you could see that you could introduce error because the signal starts to deteriorate. So base classification has to be done in a pretty sophisticated way in order for you to basically get your data extracted accurately. And so Element introduced a proprietary technique for us to do this really accurately and allowed us to push densities on these random flow cells much higher than ever has been seen before in the past. And that really has two pieces to it. One is the detection, the optics. It's really high value optics that we put into the system, but also an algorithm that allows us to have a lot more flexibility in making sure that those registrations happen in a very accurate manner. And we can be accurate through all even 2x300 bases we can run through. The first problem to solve when trying to discriminate the polonies when you're imaging them is really to understand and classify them according to their color. It's easier to do that when you have an algorithm that allows you to get higher density information and discriminate position from position. And it's also easier to do that when the colors don't overlap. As those colors start to become same in kind, it's harder to tell one position away from another when they're very close together. So as you get into diversity and lower diversity, you can see how that problem starts to creep into the quality of the data that you're reading. So oftentimes people will spike in a high diversity library in order to overcome that, such that they'll waste 30% of their real estate on a high diversity library, let's say phi X, in order for you to overcome this low diversity problem. At Element, we have figured out how to get around that problem, both because of the algorithm that we use and the base calling or the color discrimination that we have, as well as the imaging system that we built. The most important thing to understand about accuracy and how to think about it is to think about it from the perspective of it requires you to understand your application. It also requires you to understand the things that you're using to prepare your sample and to interpret your data. It's not just the sequencing box that's going to get you to the holy land of the greatest accuracy and the greatest quality. There's a lot of people that have worked on the back end of aligners that have stood that technology up for many, many years in variant colors, all along the last, more than a decade that, Illumina's, put their products out in the market. On the library prep side, there's numerous offerings in terms of opportunities where people have been continuing to optimize those. But with the quality that's now being pushed up in the Q40 Plus, there's even more opportunity. And that opportunity, we're hoping all the people will start moving in that direction to start to stand up to the qualities that these instruments can start to now provide, and hoping that that's going to change the game and how we look at data and what determines how much accuracy is enough. I think most of the time people look at accuracy as being enough because that's what they had to work with. And Q30 accuracy and the number of redundancies that you get on reads, most people say that's good enough. And it may be. But the question in science is, well, we always say we don't need more, and then we realize, well, wait a minute, there's these things we could have been looking at that we didn't have the ability to look at. We're hoping that with Elements Box out there, and we're sure the competitors in the field are going to launch right alongside of us, we're hoping that the field and the users become more comfortable using the accuracy for making the decisions from a clinical space on the patient side better than they were yesterday.